Memphis, Tennessee, June 14th, 1974. 10 minutes before Elvis Presley was scheduled to perform before a packed Mid-South Coliseum, 2 security guards burst into his dressing room, dragging a man between them. "We caught him trying to get in here, Mr. Presley." Elvis turned toward the commotion and froze. The stranger wore a white rhinestone jumpsuit almost identical to his own. His jet-black hair rose into the same pompadour. Long sideburns framed his face, dark sunglasses concealed his eyes, and even his nervous stance carried traces of Elvis's famous swagger. For one surreal instant, the king of rock and roll believed he was staring into a living mirror. Then the stranger lifted his head. "Please," he gasped as the guards restrained him. "This is a mistake." Elvis slowly rose from his chair. Outside, thousands of fans screamed his name. Inside, Elvis stared at the man who had apparently stolen his face. "Who are you?" he asked. The stranger swallowed hard. "My name is Bobby Anderson." One guard tightened his grip. "He was wandering near your private dressing room. Claims he got lost looking for the bathroom." "I did get lost," Bobby protested. "I had a ticket. Check my pocket." The second guard reached inside Bobby's jacket and produced a crumpled concert ticket. Elvis examined it, then looked at the elaborate costume. "You usually dress like that to find a bathroom?" A few musicians laughed. Bobby's cheeks turned red. "I had a performance this afternoon. I came straight here because I didn't have time to change." "What kind of performance?" Bobby removed his sunglasses. Up close, the illusion weakened. His face was rounder than Elvis's, his eyes lighter, and he stood several inches shorter. But the effort behind the transformation was undeniable. "I impersonate you, sir." The room fell quiet. Elvis tilted his head. "You do what?" "I perform your songs in bars, clubs, birthday parties, anywhere that'll hire me. I bought a ticket tonight because I wanted to see how the real Elvis does it." Elvis approached until they stood face to face. The resemblance remained uncanny. "You make a living pretending to be me?" "I'm trying to." Elvis circled him slowly, inspecting the costume. A golden eagle stretched across the back, surrounded by hundreds of rhinestones. The stitching was imperfect, but every detail had been created with extraordinary care. "Where did you get this jumpsuit?" "My wife made it." Elvis touched the sleeve. "How long did it take?" 4 months. She sewed after work every night. I glued most of the stones." Elvis looked toward the guards. "Let him go." "Mr. Presley, we don't know what he intended. He bought a ticket. The only crime I see is that he almost looks better in white than I do." The musicians laughed again. This time, even Bobby smiled. The guards released him but remained near the door. Elvis stepped back and folded his arms. "So, Bobby Anderson, you've got the clothes, the hair, and the moves. Can you sing?" Bobby's smile vanished. "A little." "Let me hear it." "Here?" "There are only 15 people watching. In a few minutes, I've got thousands." Bobby stared at the floor. "I can't sing in front of you." "You sing in front of strangers wearing my face, but you're afraid to sing in front of me?" "That's different." "How?" "They aren't Elvis Presley." For the first time, Elvis saw something deeper than embarrassment. Bobby was terrified, not of being arrested, but of disappointing the man whose life he had built his act around. Elvis picked up an acoustic guitar and played the opening chord of "Can't Help Falling in Love." "Come on," he said gently. Let's find out what you've got." Bobby's hands trembled as he began singing. His voice sounded nothing like Elvis's. It was thinner, higher, and uncertain. He missed one note, rushed the next, and nearly stopped altogether when a guitarist lowered his eyes. But Elvis continued playing. "Don't look at them," he said. "Look at me." Bobby forced himself through the verse. When he finished, silence filled the room. "I know," he muttered. "It's terrible." Elvis set the guitar aside. "No, it's honest." Bobby looked up. "I can imitate how you move, but I can't imitate what comes out of your voice. Maybe that's because you're too busy trying to sound like me. But people pay to hear Elvis." "No," Elvis replied. "They pay to feel something. If you make them feel it, they won't care that your voice isn't mine." Bobby blinked, stunned by the kindness he had expected least. "Before we continue, tell us where you are watching from tonight. Have you ever met someone you admired, or discovered that the person behind a famous name was very different from what you expected? Share your answer in the comments. If you enjoy powerful stories about kindness and the human side of legends, please like this video, share it with an Elvis fan, and subscribe, because the strange meeting inside that dressing room was about to change Bobby's life forever. Elvis studied the homemade jumpsuit again. Does impersonating me pay well? Bobby hesitated. Some weeks are better than others. That means no. My wife works at a fabric shop. I repair appliances during the day. The performances help with rent when clubs actually book me. Children? A little boy, Michael. He's 5. Elvis's amusement faded. What does he think his father does? He thinks I'm Elvis Presley. Everyone laughed except Bobby. I told him the truth, he quickly added. But when I leave in the jumpsuit, he still tells the neighbors Elvis is going to work. Elvis smiled, yet something painful moved behind his eyes. You know, there are nights when I'm not sure whether Elvis is going to work or I am. Bobby did not understand. Elvis turned toward the illuminated mirror. The man reflected there wore styled hair, stage makeup, rings, and a high, jeweled collar. People see the suit and think they know everything, Elvis said. They know the voice, the smile, the way I walk onto a stage. Sometimes I wonder whether they'd recognize me without any of it. Bobby looked at Elvis's reflection beside his own. I would. Elvis turned. How? You'd be the man who told security to release somebody who frightened him. The answer struck the room silent. Elvis stared at Bobby for a moment, then reached into his pocket and removed a small business card. He wrote a telephone number on the back and handed it over. What's this? Bobby asked. My private number. Bobby nearly dropped it. I want you to call tomorrow morning at 10. Why? Because I'm inviting you and your wife to Graceland. Bobby looked around, expecting laughter. None came. You're serious? I want to see the woman who made that jumpsuit, and I want to know what it feels like to become me every night. Bobby's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Presley, I don't know what to say. Say you'll call. I'll call. Elvis extended his hand. Bobby accepted it with both of his. Thank you. A stage manager appeared at the doorway. Elvis, you're on in 3 minutes. The roar outside grew louder. Elvis nodded toward the guards. Take Bobby to his seat and treat him like my guest. As Bobby left, Elvis called after him. One more thing. Bobby turned. Next time you're backstage dressed like me, know where the bathroom is. Laughter followed Bobby into the corridor, but once the door closed, Elvis remained beside the mirror, staring at himself. Charlie Hodge approached. "What was that invitation about?" Elvis did not answer immediately. Then he said, "That man spends every night pretending to be Elvis Presley." Charlie smiled. "Sounds exhausting." Elvis's reflection did not smile. "Yeah," he whispered. "It is." Minutes later, Elvis stepped onto the stage, and 12,000 people exploded with joy. Bobby watched from his seat, studying every movement. He believed he had just met his hero. He had no idea that by the following afternoon, Elvis would place something priceless in his hands, and confess a secret he had never dared tell the people closest to him. At exactly 10 o'clock the next morning, Bobby Anderson stood inside a telephone booth with Elvis Presley's private number trembling between his fingers. He had not slept. All night, he had taken the business card from his wallet, examined Elvis's handwriting beneath the kitchen light, and asked Mary whether the invitation could possibly be real. "Call him," she kept saying. "What if it was a joke? Then at least we'll know. What if he forgot? Bobby, Elvis Presley gave you his private number. Dial it before I do." He inserted a coin and carefully pressed each number. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. A tired voice finally answered. "Hello?" Bobby almost dropped the receiver. "Mr. Presley, this is Bobby Anderson. We met backstage last night. You told me to call at 10. There was a pause. For several terrible seconds, Bobby feared Elvis had forgotten him. Then the voice brightened. "Bobby, the other Elvis!" Bobby laughed with relief. "Yes, sir." "You still want to visit?" "More than anything." "Bring your wife. Come around 2 this afternoon. The guards will have your names." Bobby covered the receiver and mouthed to Mary, "He remembers." She pressed both hands over her mouth. That afternoon, their faded 1968 Ford rattled toward Graceland. Mary wore her best blue dress. Bobby had changed shirts 3 times before leaving, rejecting anything that made him appear as though he was attempting another impersonation. The famous gates opened. They drove along the curved driveway beneath tall trees, passing manicured lawns that seemed impossibly green. At the top of the hill stood the white columned mansion Bobby had seen in magazines. Elvis waited on the front steps. There were no spotlights, screaming fans, or glittering costumes. He wore dark trousers and a loose blue shirt with the sleeves open at his wrists. Without the stage surrounding him, he appeared younger and more tired. Bobby stopped the car and whispered, "Tell me this is happening." Mary squeezed his hand. "If it isn't, we're having the same dream." Elvis walked down the steps. "You found the place." "Hard to miss," Bobby replied. Elvis laughed and greeted Mary. "So you're the woman responsible for that jumpsuit." Mary's face reddened. "I did my best." "Your best nearly got your husband arrested." Her eyes widened. Elvis smiled. "I'm joking. Come inside." He guided them through Graceland personally. They entered the formal living room with its long white sofa and stained glass peacock panels. Elvis showed them the music room, where a piano waited beneath soft light, and told them how he sometimes played gospel songs long after everyone else had gone to sleep. Bobby examined every object with reverence. To Elvis, these were simply rooms. To Bobby, he was walking through the private world of a man he had studied for years. Mary noticed something her husband did not. Elvis kept looking at Bobby. Not with amusement, with fascination. Whenever Bobby unconsciously adjusted his collar or pushed his hair back, Elvis's eyes followed the movement as if he were observing his own reflection behaving independently. They reached the trophy room, where gold records covered the walls. Bobby stopped before them. "You must come in here whenever you need to remember what you've achieved." Elvis looked around. "I hardly come in here at all." "Why not?" "These records tell me what happened. They don't tell me who I am." He continued walking before Bobby could respond. After nearly an hour, Elvis led them into a private wardrobe room. Racks stretched from wall to wall, carrying stage outfits in white, black, blue, and crimson. Elaborate capes hung beside jeweled belts. Each costume glittered beneath the ceiling lights like ceremonial armor. Bobby stood motionless. Mary whispered, "My goodness." Elvis pulled a white jumpsuit from one rack. A magnificent peacock design spread across the chest and back, formed from blue, green, and gold stones. "I wore this a few times last year," he said. Bobby carefully touched one sleeve. "It's beautiful." "What do you think, Mary?" She studied the stitching. "I think whoever made it has better equipment than my kitchen table." Elvis smiled. "How long did Bobby's suit take you?" 4 months. I worked on it after closing the fabric shop." "Why?" Mary looked at her husband. "Because he came alive when he performed. We didn't have much money, but I thought if the costume looked right, maybe people would give his voice a chance." Elvis's expression softened. He removed the peacock jumpsuit from its hanger and held it toward Bobby. "Try this on." Bobby stepped back. "I couldn't." "I'm not asking you to buy it." "It must be worth thousands." "Then don't spill anything on it." Several minutes later, Bobby emerged wearing the genuine Elvis jumpsuit. It fit almost perfectly. Mary began crying. Elvis walked around him, adjusted the high collar, and straightened the jeweled belt. Then he stepped beside Bobby before a full-length mirror. The resemblance was astonishing. 2 men with black pompadours and long sideburns stood shoulder to shoulder. One was the most famous performer alive. The other repaired appliances by day and sang in nearly empty bars at night. Yet inside that mirror, the distance between them seemed to disappear. Elvis nodded. "It's yours." Bobby turned sharply. "What?" "The jumpsuit. Keep it." "No, sir." Elvis placed the hanger in his hands. "I didn't ask whether you wanted it." Mary wiped her eyes. "Mr. Presley, we can't accept something this valuable. You said you made his costume because you wanted people to give his voice a chance. Maybe this one will open a few doors." Bobby stared down at the peacock design. "Why would you do this for me?" Elvis answered quietly, "Because I remember what it feels like when nobody opens the door." He called for one of his staff photographers. "Let's get proof before Bobby wakes up." They posed in matching white jumpsuits beneath the wardrobe room lights. Elvis gave his famous half-smile, while Bobby tried desperately to stop trembling. The photographer took several pictures. At that moment, a staff member stepped through the doorway, stopped, and stared at both men. "Which one of you is Elvis?" Everyone burst into laughter. Elvis pointed at Bobby. "The one with the better suit." The laughter continued, but Bobby saw sadness briefly cross Elvis's face. When the photographs were finished, Elvis invited him into the music room, while Mary remained with a seamstress who was adjusting the costume. Elvis sat at the piano. "Sing yesterday's song again." Bobby's stomach tightened. "I sound even worse in daylight." "Stop trying to sound like me." "How?" "Tell me why you chose the song." Bobby looked toward the keys. Mary and I heard it the night I proposed to her. We were parked outside her parents' house. I was too nervous to ask, so the whole song played before I said anything. Elvis played the opening chord. Then don't sing about my love. Sing about yours. Bobby began. His voice remained thin, but something had changed. He stopped forcing Elvis's phrasing and allowed his own memories to shape the words. When he finished, Elvis nodded. There you are. Bobby smiled. I still don't sound like you. That's the point. Silence settled between them. Then Bobby asked the question he had carried since the previous night. What is it really like being Elvis Presley? Elvis's fingers remained on the piano keys. Everybody looks at the jumpsuit and sees freedom, he said. But some nights, this suit feels like a cage decorated with jewels. Bobby waited. Elvis stared toward the dark reflection in the piano. I walk onto a stage, and people expect the man they remember. The young man from television, the rebel in black leather, the king who never gets tired, never grows afraid, and never disappoints anyone. His voice dropped. So I give them that man. Isn't he you? Sometimes. Elvis looked directly at Bobby. Other times, I think I'm the most successful Elvis impersonator in the world. Bobby's smile vanished. Elvis continued, You put on my clothes because pretending to be me feeds your family. I put them on because thousands of people might stop loving me if I become myself. Before Bobby could answer, raised voices erupted in the hallway. The door opened and Colonel Parker entered. His gaze moved from Elvis to Bobby, then to the original peacock jumpsuit draped across a chair. What is that man doing in your clothes? Elvis rose slowly. I gave them to him. Parker's face darkened. No, you didn't. He seized the jumpsuit from the chair. These costumes belong to the Elvis Presley organization. Bobby stepped backward, but Elvis did not move. They belong to me, he said. Parker held the costume against his chest. Everything bearing your name belongs to the business. Elvis's eyes hardened. Then Parker turned toward Bobby and delivered an order that erased every trace of joy from the room. Take it off and get out of Graceland. Take it off and get out of Graceland. Colonel Parker's voice struck the room like a slammed door. Bobby's hands moved instinctively toward the jeweled belt. The joy that had filled his face only moments earlier disappeared beneath humiliation. I'm sorry, he whispered. I never meant to cause trouble. Elvis stepped between Bobby and the colonel. Leave the suit on. Parker stared at him. You cannot give away company property. I wore it, I paid for it, and now I've given it to Bobby. That costume is part of your image. Elvis's expression hardened. My image is standing in front of you. The man wearing the costume is my guest. Parker lowered his voice. You have no idea what this could do. He performs in cheap clubs using your name. Now he'll advertise himself wearing an authentic Elvis Presley jumpsuit. People will think you endorsed him. I do endorse him. Bobby looked up sharply. Parker laughed without humor. You heard him sing? I did. And you still want your name connected to him? The insult landed harder than Bobby expected. He lowered his eyes, ashamed of the voice he had never been able to change. Elvis noticed. Bobby, he said, look at me. Bobby obeyed. Don't let another man decide what your effort is worth. Then Elvis turned toward Parker. He works all day repairing appliances, performs at night, and goes home to a wife who spent 4 months making him a costume at her kitchen table. That sounds more like the beginning of my career than anything you've said today." Parker's face reddened. "You are not responsible for every struggling entertainer in Memphis." "No, I'm responsible for how I treat the one standing in my house." Mary appeared at the doorway with the seamstress. She had heard enough to understand what was happening. "We'll leave," she said quietly. "Bobby doesn't need the suit." Elvis shook his head. "Yes, he does." "No, Mr. Presley. He needed to meet you." That was already more than he ever dreamed of. She approached her husband and began unfastening the belt. Elvis gently stopped her hand. "What would your little boy say if his daddy came home without it?" Mary looked away. "He'd probably think Bobby wasn't good enough." Elvis turned toward Parker. "You hear that? This isn't about rhinestones. It's about a 5-year-old boy believing his father matters." Parker replied coldly, "Sentiment does not protect a business, and business doesn't protect a soul." The two men stared at one another. Bobby could feel years of resentment passing silently between them. This argument had started long before he entered Graceland. The jumpsuit had merely given it a shape. Parker pointed toward Elvis. "One day, your generosity will leave you with nothing." Elvis glanced at Bobby and Mary. "If giving something away helps a family survive, I didn't lose it." He took the costume from Parker's hands and returned it to Bobby. "The suit is his." Parker adjusted his coat. "Then have your lawyers prepare a release. When he damages your reputation, do not say I failed to warn you." He walked out. The room remained silent until his footsteps disappeared. Bobby immediately removed the jeweled belt. "I can't accept this now." Elvis sighed. "We just fought a battle over it." "That's why I can't. I came here because you were kind to me. I don't want to become another problem in your life." "You're not the problem." Bobby looked toward the hallway. "He's right about one thing. I'm not good enough to represent you." Elvis moved closer. "I'm not asking you to represent me." "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Represent yourself." Bobby stared at the jumpsuit. "But people only hire me because I pretend to be you." Elvis walked to the piano and sat down. "Then tonight, we find out whether there's a man underneath the costume." He called Charlie Hodge and several musicians into the room. Within minutes, the quiet music room became an improvised rehearsal space. Elvis gave Bobby one rule: no copying. Whenever Bobby deepened his voice unnaturally, Elvis stopped him. Whenever he repeated one of Elvis's famous gestures, Elvis shook his head. Again, but this time let Bobby sing. For nearly 2 hours, Bobby struggled. Without the familiar mannerisms, he felt exposed. His voice cracked, his timing slipped, and frustration reddened his face. "I can't do this." Elvis remained at the piano. "You can imitate me in front of strangers, but you're afraid to reveal yourself in front of 5 people. What if they don't like me?" Elvis smiled sadly. "Now you know what being Elvis feels like." Bobby took a breath and began again. This time, he chose an old gospel song his mother had sung while washing dishes. He closed his eyes and stopped thinking about curled lips, swinging hips, or famous phrasing. His natural voice emerged. It was not powerful, but it was warm. Mary began crying before the first verse ended. When Bobby finished, Elvis leaned back from the piano. "That man doesn't need to hide behind me." Bobby looked at his wife. "Was it really all right?" Mary crossed the room and kissed him. "It sounded like the man I married." Elvis arranged for the staff photographer to take another picture. In the first, Bobby wore the authentic peacock suit and stood beside the king. In the second, Bobby wore ordinary trousers and a plain shirt, while Elvis stood beside him in equally simple clothes. "Why two pictures?" Bobby asked. Elvis handed them both to him. "The first shows the man you admire. The second shows the man you shouldn't forget." Before Bobby and Mary left, Elvis wrote the name of a Memphis club owner on another card. "Give this to him tomorrow." Bobby examined it. "What is it?" "A recommendation." "For an Elvis act?" "For Bobby Anderson." Bobby's eyes filled. "No one knows that name." "They will if you stop apologizing for it." As they drove away, the peacock jumpsuit lay carefully folded across the back seat. Beside it rested the two photographs and Elvis's handwritten recommendation. Mary looked at her husband. "What are you thinking?" "That I spent years learning how to walk like another man. And now? Now I have to learn how to stand like myself." The following afternoon, Bobby entered the Blue Lantern Club and handed Elvis's card to its owner, Samuel Reeves. Reeves read it twice. "Elvis says you can sing? He says I should try." "That isn't the same thing." "No, sir." The owner studied Bobby's nervous face. "Friday night, 20 minutes. No payment unless the audience stays." Bobby accepted immediately. When Friday arrived, the club was crowded. Word had spread that an Elvis impersonator possessed one of the King's genuine costumes. Backstage, Bobby opened the garment bag and stared at the peacock jumpsuit. Mary expected him to put it on. Instead, he closed the bag. "What are you doing?" she asked. "If I wear it, they'll watch Elvis." He picked up an ordinary dark jacket. "Tonight, I need them to meet me." The announcer introduced him by name. No one applauded. Bobby walked beneath the spotlight wearing no rhinestones, sunglasses, or jeweled belt. Murmurs of disappointment moved through the room. Someone shouted, "Where's Elvis?" Another voice laughed. "We came to see the king, not an appliance repairman." Bobby's courage nearly collapsed. Then he saw Mary standing near the back, holding the photograph of him without the costume. He approached the microphone. "My name is Bobby Anderson," he said. "For years, I've earned money pretending to be somebody greater than me." The crowd grew restless. "Tonight, somebody greater told me that hiding is not the same as performing." He signaled the pianist. The first song began. Bobby sang in his own voice. Several people turned toward the exit. Then the rear doors opened. A tall figure entered, wearing dark glasses and a black coat. The room fell silent as Elvis Presley stepped inside. Bobby stopped singing. Elvis removed his glasses and looked directly at him. "Don't stop now," he said. "I came to hear Bobby Anderson." Bobby gripped the microphone. But before he could continue, the club owner rushed forward and whispered something into Elvis's ear. Reporters had followed him. Dozens were gathering outside, and they believed Elvis was about to expose a man who had been illegally performing under his name. Camera flashes burst through the club windows. Reporters crowded around the entrance, shouting questions, as Samuel Reeves struggled to hold the door closed. "They think Bobby has been using your name illegally," the owner whispered. "Someone told them you came here to shut down his act." Bobby stood beneath the spotlight, unable to move. Only moments earlier, he had found the courage to perform without Elvis's hair, gestures, or rhinestones. Now, every newspaper in Memphis might brand him a fraud. He lowered the microphone. "I'll leave." Elvis stepped forward. "No, I don't want to embarrass you." "You're not embarrassing me." Bobby looked toward the reporters. They'll say I exploited your name. Maybe Colonel Parker was right." Elvis removed his black coat and placed it over a chair. "If you run now, they'll write whatever story they want." "What should I do?" "Finish your song." Before Bobby could respond, the front doors opened and reporters flooded inside. Photographers raised their cameras, customers jumped from their seats, and the small room erupted into confusion. "Elvis, are you suing this man? Did he steal one of your costumes? Are you here to stop an unauthorized impersonator?" Elvis stepped onto the stage and took the second microphone. The room gradually fell silent. "Nobody stole anything," he said. "I gave Bobby Anderson that jumpsuit myself." The reporters immediately began shouting again. Elvis raised one hand. "I came here because Bobby made a mistake." Bobby's face fell. Elvis looked at him. He spent years believing that the only way people would listen was if he pretended to be somebody else. A reporter called out, "Isn't that what an impersonator does?" "An impersonator copies a performance," Elvis replied. "He doesn't have to erase the person underneath it." Elvis faced the audience. "I heard Bobby sing at Graceland. Not as me, as himself. That's the man I came to hear tonight." The club became quiet. Elvis stepped away from the microphone. "Start again." Bobby looked toward Mary. She nodded through tears. The pianist returned to the opening chord. Bobby began the gospel song his mother had sung during his childhood. His voice remained lighter than Elvis's, but he no longer forced it downward. He did not curl his lip, shake his legs, or imitate the gestures he had studied for years. He simply sang. At first, the photographers continued taking pictures. Then one lowered his camera. A waitress stopped carrying drinks. Two men who had laughed earlier turned back toward the stage. Bobby's voice grew steadier with every line. The song carried no technical brilliance, but it held the memory of a small kitchen, a tired mother, and a boy who once believed music did not require fame to matter. Elvis listened from the shadows. When the final note faded, the room remained silent. Bobby's fear returned. Then Elvis began applauding. Mary joined him. Samuel Reeves followed. Within seconds, the entire club stood. Bobby covered his face. He had received applause many times while dressed as Elvis Presley. This was the first ovation given to Bobby Anderson. Elvis returned to the stage and embraced him. "You hear that?" he whispered. "They stayed." The reporters captured the moment, the world's most famous performer holding an appliance repairman who had finally discovered his own voice. Samuel Reeves approached the microphone. "Bobby, you were promised 20 minutes. He glanced toward the cheering crowd. "I'm offering you every Friday night for the next 3 months." Mary cried out. Bobby stared at the owner. "As myself?" Reeves smiled. "I already know what Elvis sounds like." Laughter filled the club. Bobby turned toward Elvis. "How can I thank you?" "By never wasting another night trying to disappear." One reporter asked whether Bobby would stop impersonating Elvis entirely. Elvis answered before he could. "There's nothing wrong with celebrating somebody who inspires you. But admiration should help you become more of yourself, not less." He looked at Bobby. "Wear the jumpsuit when people want the memory. Take it off when they need the man." The following morning, newspapers across Memphis printed photographs from the Blue Lantern. The expected scandal never appeared. Instead, one headline read, "The King helps his double find his own voice." Bookings arrived almost immediately. Some clubs still wanted Bobby's Elvis tribute, especially after hearing that he owned a genuine peacock jumpsuit. but others asked for the man who had sung beside Elvis at the Blue Lantern. Bobby created 2 performances. The first honored the king with familiar songs, costumes, and movements. The second belonged entirely to Bobby Anderson: gospel music, country ballads, and stories about repairing appliances, raising a son, and learning that an ordinary life could still deserve a spotlight. For the first time, he earned enough from music to leave his daytime job. Mary continued making costumes, but she began adding small details that belonged only to Bobby. A bluebird stitched beneath one collar, their son's initials inside a sleeve, and a silver star representing the night at Graceland. The peacock jumpsuit was reserved for special performances. Before wearing it, Bobby always touched the stones and remembered Elvis saying, "Represent yourself." Several months later, Bobby performed at a large charity event in Memphis. He had just finished his final song when a package arrived backstage. Inside was the photograph taken at Graceland, the image of Elvis and Bobby standing side by side in matching costumes. Elvis had signed the bottom, "There may be many men in the suit, but only one man lives in your heart. Let him sing." Bobby framed it above his piano. He tried calling Graceland to express his gratitude, but Elvis was constantly traveling. Their paths never crossed again. Then, in August of 1977, the news reached Bobby while he was preparing for an evening performance. Elvis Presley was gone. Bobby sat alone in the dressing room with the peacock jumpsuit spread across his lap. For nearly an hour, he could not move. The club owner offered to cancel the show. Bobby shook his head. "He once told me people don't come only to hear a voice, they come to feel something." That night, Bobby walked onto the stage wearing the genuine jumpsuit Elvis had given him. The audience expected familiar movements and famous songs. Instead, he placed a chair beneath the spotlight and told them about the night security mistook him for Elvis. He described the private invitation, the Graceland tour, the gift, and the moment Elvis admitted that he sometimes felt like an impersonator of himself. Then Bobby removed the jeweled jacket. Underneath, he wore an ordinary black shirt. "The world remembers the king," he said. "I want to remember the man who looked at someone struggling and decided he mattered." Bobby sang the gospel song from the Blue Lantern. No one left. When he finished, the audience stood in silence before offering gentle applause that sounded less like celebration and more like gratitude. Years passed. Bobby continued performing until the late 1990s. He kept the peacock jumpsuit in perfect condition, wearing it only on rare occasions. Whenever someone asked why he did not sell it, he gave the same answer: "That suit is worth more than money. It reminds me of the day Elvis Presley saw value in me before I could see it myself." The 2 photographs remained in Bobby's family. His grandchildren loved the first, the famous image of 2 nearly identical Elvises dressed in white. They often argued about which man was the real king, but Bobby treasured the second photograph more. In it, neither man wore a stage costume. There were no capes, rhinestones, or dark glasses. Elvis and Bobby stood in ordinary clothes, smiling like 2 friends who understood the burden of being compared to someone they could never perfectly become. When his grandson once asked which photograph showed the real Elvis, Bobby pointed to the second. "That one." "How can you tell?" "Because he isn't performing." The boy studied the picture. "Then which one is the real you?" Bobby smiled. "The man standing beside him." That was the true gift Elvis gave Bobby Anderson. Not an expensive jumpsuit, not a famous photograph, not even a better career. He gave him permission to step out of another man's shadow, and perhaps Bobby gave Elvis something in return. For one quiet afternoon at Graceland, the king looked into the face of his impersonator and recognized the painful truth hidden beneath his own crown. A costume could make the world believe you were someone extraordinary, but only kindness revealed who you truly were.